Excellent. Awesome. All right. So some of the key points that you raised was humans don't need carbohydrates, fructose, or glucose from plants to be optimal or to be healthy. So that means that physiologically, biologically, we do not need to eat fruit. If we were to eat fruit, eating the whole fruit is better than drinking the juice, because when you eat the whole fruit, you get the fiber, and then that blocks nutrient absorption and blocks how much fructose you're actually absorbing into your system. Did I get that one right?
Yeah, and you're also just getting a hell of a lot less fructose.
Oh yeah, of course, because you can only eat like 2 apples before you're like, I've had enough. But you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I mean, it's probably going to be like 10 apples are going to go into a glass of apple juice.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I don't see too many people eating 10 apples in just one go, or they might drink down 5 glasses of orange juice, or I think actually Carnivore really actually does. And he was talking about in one article that he gets like 40% of his calories from orange juice alone. So so and he feels better and he likes it, and that's fine, but if he did cocaine every day too, he'd have a lot of energy, he'd feel fantastic, for a time. And then it's going to catch up to him. And I think this will catch up to him too. He's eating a lot of meat. He's not eating a lot of other things. So, he's going to be, cushioned from this a bit, but I think it will catch up to him. I think it will cause him harm, unfortunately. And I hope that he gets away from it before anything too bad happens.
Yeah, me too. And eating a small amount of fruit is obviously going to be better than eating a large amount of fruit. But to your point earlier about sugar being addictive, fruit can be addictive too. So, you can easily eat a giant plate of fruit and then an hour or so later go back again. To what I was saying before, like, I think the carnivore community is really important for people who are unwell, people who are sick. And personally, I think it can be confusing for people if you then say to them, hey, you can get your sugar, your energy spike. You just can't do it through eating, lollies or the crap that you're eating before. You have to, you can actually get it through eating honey and fruit. I think that can kind of contribute or help to fuel that addiction they already have to these sugary foods. So that can be, it can make things even worse.
Yeah, I've actually spoken out about this before. The last time I was on, Dr. Baker's podcast, this is when I first sort of started hearing about these guys saying that fructose was not only okay, but it was good for you and you needed it. And so I did a whole, hour with Dr. Baker talking about this. And I did not think that was the case. Since that podcast, I had a lot of people reach out to me and message me on social media and so forth. Just basically telling me that in their experience, that what I had said, rung true and had been a problem for them, because they said, oh, I can eat honey, I can eat fruit. And so they did. So they started eating it. It started out as a little, and then it was a little more and a little more, and it was a lot more. And they said within 6 months, they were eating pizza and junk food and shit, and they gained all the weight, and they had all their health problems back again. And then they sort of had a wake up moment. For some of them, that was, my talk with Dr. Baker, where I was like, look, this stuff is really bad. And they sort of, had a come to Jesus moment, going like, oh crap, that's what happened to me. I need to just go back, just pure. I can't eat any sugar at all. Some people aren't going to have that problem. Some people don't have that issue with food. I mean, I loved sweets, but I certainly didn't eat a lot of them. And, when I did, it would sort of be at a time, but I almost never ate sweets. And so I didn't have that problem. And obviously exercise, extensively, with my athletic endeavors and so forth, and playing professional sports. But, not everybody has that. And a lot of people come to that, like you say, because they're having health issues or weight management issues. And so they've had a very unhealthy relationship with food. They've had these food addictions. They've treated food as drugs. And specifically, we talk about comfort foods. This makes us feel better. That's a drug. You're self-medicating. We have people with, different sorts of issues, and they're eating this food because it makes them feel a little better. So, we are really using this stuff in the wrong way. And so for those people in particular, if they start reintroducing fruit and honey, even if they're now in a state of metabolic health, they're going to, be at high risk.
It's like the gateway back to the old habits.
Yeah, exactly. And, again, it is addictive. It's addictive because it is a drug. And so, again, saying that you can drink if you don't have cirrhosis. Yeah. It's less bad for you if you don't have cirrhosis, but this is what gives you cirrhosis. One of the things that gives you cirrhosis, sugar also gives you cirrhosis. So, it's, I don't think that's a good thing to recommend people for health. Obviously you can caution them and say, look, if you really want to, just be careful with it. It's going to cause harm, but if you don't do too much of it, it's not going to cause a huge amount of harm. You can say that, and that's going to be more accurate. But what people are saying now is you can eat all the fruit and honey that you want. It's not a big deal. And more than that, it's good for you and you have to have it, that it's vital, but it's not. It is not vital. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. These things are not essential. They aren't, you do not need them. And I would argue that you do not want them unless you're starving to death. They will confer a benefit if you're dying and, you need it to stave off death. I think that's the only benefit. I think that's the reason that this stuff tastes sweet to us and that we can eat this in a while, because people that were able to eat this stuff historically during lean times were the ones that survived. And so, but that's a survival mechanism. That's, when you're in a really bad state, that is not optimal. That is not necessary.
Okay. Now, talk to me like I'm 5. You mentioned earlier about the organ consumption, and you were talking about how organs like liver are really high in vitamin A and other nutrients. And by consuming a lot of these organs, it can mean that kind of like our base threshold of how much we need increases, and that can sort of be related to requirements for eating carbohydrates. Could you reiterate that point before that you were saying? I might have done a botched job of summarizing it there.
No, that's pretty accurate. Well, as I've said before, depending on what you eat, you need a different constellation of nutrients. I talk about some of my blog posts and so forth.
This is a really interesting point, because it just goes to show that there's a diet and nutritional input is not the same for everybody. So, like reading on the back of a pack and comparing that with someone else, as you say, it's contextual. It depends on what else you're putting into your body. So,
yeah, it really does. Think about people who drink coffee. This saps your body of magnesium and so forth. So you're going to need more magnesium than other people will. So, that's just a very simple example. But, I talk about this with, vitamin C, and this is something that, people have talked about before, and I have a blog post on it. When you eat carbohydrates, this blocks out vitamin C absorption in your gut, but it also blocks out vitamin C in your systemic system. When your blood sugar goes up, this can suppress your utilization of vitamin C. So you need more vitamin C to get the same results. So this goes across the board. We have negative nutrients and so forth, and different, like tannins bind onto proteins and different sorts of nutrients, and lectins do as well. And so your body's not going to absorb all these things. So you're putting this stuff in your mouth, but it's not actually getting into your body. And then other things are going with it, and they're disrupting your body as well. So you need a very different constellation of nutrients to go in your mouth to actually get them to go in your body and do the job that they're supposed to, depending on what you eat. And so carbohydrates do this as well. So when you're eating carbohydrates, when you're eating these sorts of things, you will need more of certain vitamins and so forth. Now, again, this is as far as the vitamin A and people eating organ meat sort of thing. That's complete supposition. I'm just sort of spitballing there. But these are two phenomenons we are aware of, that you're eating carbohydrates and so forth. This will increase your requirement for certain vitamins and minerals, and organ meat has sometimes too many vitamins. We look at how much organs or how many pounds of liver meat exists to how many hundreds of pounds of skeletal muscle and fat. It's 1 to hundreds. So, you're going to be in a situation in the wild where you hunt an animal and you take it down. Most of what you're eating is going to be skeletal muscle, and you're going to have a bit of liver and some of the offal and so forth. The majority of it's going to be skeletal muscle and fat. And so that's going to self-limit it. But also the Inuits did not eat organs. They didn't eat the liver. They didn't eat these sorts of things. And, even the Hadza and so forth that, Dr. Saladino talked about, they show video of this stuff. They pass it around and, they take a little bite and they're so, they're in awe of this sort of thing because, it's very nutritious. But it can be too nutritious. It can cause problems. You can have a problem with too many vitamins, too many minerals, and so forth. And so you have all these hunters going around doing this thing, and they each get one bite of the liver. That's very different than, say someone who has access to a grocery store and is just eating, half a pound of liver every single day, which some people are doing because they're hearing this, oh, you need liver, or they're taking supplements and they're eating liver and they're doing these sorts of things. You can definitely run into problems doing that. And so it could be that these people, when they incorporate, different plant material and carbohydrates and sugar back into their diet, this rearranges the amount of vitamins that they require and how they're utilized in their body. And so now their threshold goes up and they have a higher vitamin requirement. And so now their hypervitaminosis is normal. It could be. It's completely theoretical. And it's just something I'm thinking about. But these are phenomena that we are aware of. And this could be what's happening. It does describe, the observed phenomena. It may be completely wrong, but it's something that could be happening, and it is an alternate for the fact that you have or you have a carbohydrate and fructose deficiency, which we know is wrong because I don't have a carbohydrate or fructose deficiency. The Inuits don't. Generational peoples through the ice ages didn't. So we know that you don't require fructose or exogenous carbohydrates. We know that for a cold frozen fact. So it's something else, and that, and how I explain with organ meat and carbohydrates is a plausible explanation for that. And I would be interested to see if they just stopped eating organ meat, would their problems go away? I bet that it would.
A very interesting theory. So it's sort of like somebody does carnivore and then they start incorporating a lot of organ meat, particularly liver. Then they get, did you say hypervitaminosis?
Yeah. Hypervitaminosis just means you have a toxic level of vitamins,
which is becoming toxic. But then you start incorporating some carbohydrates in the form of fruit, which means that the rate of vitamins that your body's absorbing goes down. So then consuming all these organs doesn't seem like, or doesn't do the same sort of damage that it maybe was before when you didn't have the fruit.
Well, it could potentially reduce your absorption of it, but also increase your requirement of it and reduce your body's utilization of it in your in vivo. So it could do a number of different things. The end result being that you need more vitamin A than you would otherwise, And if you're getting more vitamin A and that was, heretofore causing a problem, that may now just be normalized. Potentially. Again, this is it's purely just spitballing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do not see these problems in my patients or myself or my friends or my family who've been long-term carnivore and have absolutely no carbohydrates or fructose in their bodies.
Not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands, of case studies that Sean Baker has collected through Rivera.
Probably tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Yeah. It's a lot. And none of them are sort of reaching out for fruit because they're really unwell on carnivore.
And the Inuits.
And the Inuits.
Just never forget the Inuits.
Yeah.
Never forget the ice ages. This is fundamental. And this is something that, maybe if Dr. Saladino sort of looked at it from that point of view, he might agree with, because he does talk about this. He likes to come from an evolutionary background, first principles, and so forth. And that's an example of that. Fundamentally we evolved during the ice times, and we existed during several iterations of ice ages, And we have people still today living in the Arctic North, or the Arctic tundra, and where they don't have access to these sorts of plant materials. And if you go far enough north, they're on ice drifts and things like that.
Yeah, there's no bees there.
No, it's not even any grass. There's just no vegetation.
Yeah, I mean your example, okay, the Inuits, it's pretty concrete. But even reading like Weston A. Price's literature, when he talks about the native diets, he's not talking about honey. He I don't even know if I remember him mentioning honey. Maybe he does. But I think the amount of honey and fruit that these guys are postulating that native groups were eating, I really think that's been exaggerated. As you said before, it's like a fallback nutrition in an emergency sort of situation.
And it's certainly not 40% of your calories a day
in orange juice. I mean, I don't know how many native groups had abundant modern oranges and
how long their teeth lasted. I mean, just no, like that's I don't think that's in any way, shape, or form representative of the available data. And I mean, just look at the stable isotope studies and so forth. If these guys were getting 40% of their calories from glucose and sugar and so forth, we'd see that, and we don't. And we saw like you did stable isotope studies with the mummies in Egypt. It's thought that there are more mummies buried around Egypt than there are people alive today. Everyone was mummified. It wasn't just the royalty, and so it was just everyone. That's just how they buried the dead and preserved the dead. And so they looked at pharaohs and so forth, and they found they had evidence of heart disease and arthritis and tooth decay, probably because they were rich and they ate all this fat. Well, actually, they had all the peasant stock and so forth all also had the exact same degree of heart disease, obesity, arthritis, and tooth decay. And even their statues displayed this when they had men with gynecomastia and pot bellies and so forth. And they found that from the stable isotope study, these guys were eating a lot of wheat. That was their staple diet, a lot of grain, and that the royalty, the nobility, were probably had more access to it, were eating more of it. But they were all eating it. They were all eating grains, and they all had the same diseases. And according to the stable isotope studies that they did, they found that everyone was eating the same thing, and they were getting these problems from eating plants and so forth. So, we would have seen that, if we looked at, prehistoric man, and they were getting an abundance of their calories from plant sources or honey. We would see that in these studies, and that's very hard science. Maybe there's a they can dispute that and for one reason or another, but at the moment that's the best information that we have. That's as hard as we get.
To counter that, I think Saladino and Aurelius would say any these sort of ripped images or statues or remnants of our ancestors, they'd say, they were eating fruit and meat and fat.
Well, the ones like the Greek gods and things like that, like maybe. I mean, you can get ripped either way, and again, by the time we had statues and so forth, I mean, this was
there's a bit of exaggeration happening.
Well, it could be, but it's also the dawn of civilization, and they would have had agriculture at that point, and so I'm sure that they were eating that stuff, but they were also eating a lot of meat and milk and so forth. This was a very important staple. Anybody who studied ancient Greece and Rome would know this, but sure, I mean they would have had sort of other things as well, but really seasonally, and generally just the wealthy. Aristocratic sort of class would have access to these things more often, but again, seasonally. But either way, you can't really argue with the ice ages. Like they are, they're pretty unmoving, and so again with the Inuits and so forth, they live way up north. There's no plants, there's no honey, there's no fruit, and so if this was a vital, necessary, essential nutrient, they would all have died out. They would not exist, and they do exist. and we exist, and we made it through the ice times. To be here and just to talk about it is hard proof that you don't need fruit and glucose and carbohydrates and sugar. You do not. You just don't. And I would argue that they harm you for many, many reasons.
Excellent. All right. I think that's a good way to finish things.